Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Arthur's Roundtable. Super happy to be here with you today. And then, full disclosure, Alex is a dear friend, longtime colleague. I've been actually working with him on a variety of fronts, including what you're going to hear about today, ToneWell, which is beyond fascinating, and you'll see why in a minute. But Alex, thanks for doing this. Super appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure for being here.
So let's start with the beginning of your journey because it's fun, right? Let's talk about your life at the
Sure.
beginning, and then we'll get into this whole ToneWell thing.
I was born on a wonderful summer day, July of 1973. Fast forward to being an actualized human being. So I come out of the consumer packaged goods business. I have been bringing things. I like to think of myself as a builder, and I've been building for other people for 30 plus years. I started in the music business, which will become relevant later in the story. And after getting out of the music business, I went into hardcore consumer goods, very shiny object type things, skincare, cosmetics, fragrance, supplements, vitamins, all that resonated somebody else's DNA. You were somebody, you should have Alex was the guy to go out and find the deal for you and bring it into the market and build product. It was a wonderful adventure, a lot of fun. At some point, I pivoted into things that had more of an efficacious nature because after doing enough problem solving for people and seeing the plastic thing end up on the shelf, you recognize, hey, maybe I should do something that's a little more conductive to the betterment of things as opposed to just adding more noise. Nothing against noise. And I started moving into thought leaders and gurus. To be honest with you, it's all chalk and cheese to me. Simply meaning like you could be Sadhguru for the UN, or you could be Jennifer Lopez that wants to do a fragrance. It's a program. Programs have packages. Packages goes on shelves. People find that thing on the shelf. They go home and they brag about it. It could be, again, the UN
Culminating.
nexus that you're like, oh my God, we're going to change the world. And let me go tell you about how I'm changing the world. Or it could be the fragrance sitting in your boudoir. They have this life cycle that comes into being. And after doing the guru thought leader for a while, I moved into, at the time, which was called the Green Revolution. And then the Green Revolution became organic, and organic became wellness, and wellness is now longevity. And the irony of those things to me, as somebody that was building these things, was that very few people asked you about your well being, which is kind of what you hope for people, somebody's well being. So, along that path, fortunately enough,
Sorry to interrupt, but kind of like the difference between being rich and wealthy.
yeah, well, exactly. If you're rich, you're working the rest of your life. If you're wealthy, you have the ability to, not because you've owned your time again, right? So, in the difference between wellness is what you're chasing. Well-being is what you have. And for me, as I was fortunate enough to be a sole proprietor in the world of what I operate. So the clients that I would chase, because I wasn't an agency, meaning like nobody dumped this on my lap, I could go out and find the things I found interesting. I began to pivot into products that made the difference for the consumer. Things like neurofeedback or EMF technology or things of that nature. And along that pathway, I actually stumbled into the technology that becomes ToneWell. So long story long. Let me go back for 2 seconds. When I was in the music business and I started making records, I would mix a record on an oscilloscope, right? It's the thing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
does this that you probably
Yeah.
had in your physics class somewhere in high school. And it's an X and Y axis that has what looks like a crazy eight or an infinity symbol doing this across it. And when it was fuzzy, it was out of phase. And me, as no musicologist, but just a guy with good ears, I would mix until the line was nice and solid and had a good movement to it, meant that everything was in phase with itself. And therefore, probably pleasing to the ears, much better than cacophony of a cymbal fighting against a guitar or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Back to where we are now. So when I came across this technology of ToneWell, I understood it rudimentarily. I understand that when somebody says to you, I don't have the bandwidth for that, or that didn't vibe with me, or you better watch your tone. with me. Those are frequency words, whether they recognize it or not. So when somebody says that didn't resonate with me, it's the converse of playing the song and having your hair stand up, because that's literally resonating with you. It's creating the
Crazy.
molecules in your body react to a sound. And that, for me, when I started working in pulse magnetic electric frequency, PEMF, I recognized that if somebody could affect your outcome by the not just shape of the wave, but the tone that they were playing, inflammation, autoimmune disease like Lyme's disease, your mood could be affected by. And then if you go to YouTube and look at the millions and millions of videos that are just frequency, 1111 hertz, 428 hertz, like they make you feel a certain way. They make you emote in a way. That there had to have been the converse, the measurement tool, if you would. So 2.5 years ago, by just being the inquisitive person that I am, I came across a bunch of scientists that like to scientist, meaning like they're not interested in putting product in the world. I'm a product into the world guy. I'm chocolate and peanut butter effect, right? Like one of those moments. And I said to them, hey, I bet you that you could keep sciencing for the rest of life, and I can put product into the world that can affect people's lives, and we can do this together. And that's what ToneWell is born out of. So just to kind of bring this home and how it works. So your voice reflects what your nervous system and your physiology are operating, how they are operating. So you are broadcasting all the time. Though you might not understand it, your radio dial that has very specific radio stations might also have pirate radio stations and lesser wattage radio stations, and you can only hear them sometimes, but they're always there. On a clear night when the wind is blowing, you can get that station from a couple miles away extra than when it's cloudy and there's a lot of traffic. But it's always there, always there. So what we do is we extract the acoustic and the temporal features within inside of that. And from your 30-second voice clip, we then match it against very well established, recognizable patterns. So for well over 20 years, research has been done in the autoacoustic world of wellness and health. And how your heart is beating, how your nervous system is running. There are endless papers in that side of the world. And if you just looked at the A to B on it, right? Meaning like if large scale institution is looking at your heart in a certain way, and NIH is doing studies on autoacoustic for children and how that affects their learning, then the middle is where a guy like me sits, where ToneWell sits. So we can take these well established patterns and we organize them in a way that recognizes certain outcomes, then take it and make it into very plain English and say to you, we're not a diagnostic. I have to put this way up front. I'm not actually trying to be in the medical diagnostic space. My entire thought pattern here is based on this. If I can give you a better snapshot of what's happening, you can build a better relationship with yourself. And if it can happen in real time, right now, then you can actually begin to make the choices right now that affect the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and then amplify that to month, year, decade, life. And that's what I see missing in the wellness longevity space. Back to, I want to help people with their well-being. So ToneWell, very straightforward, is you take a 30-second voice clip, speak into your phone, create a file. It gets uploaded into our system. Our computer learning algorithm, AI is something else that we use, but our computer learning algorithm takes that information, matches it against 20 plus years of white papers, hundreds of thousands of other patterns, and then brings forth a snapshot that is your body top to bottom. Your physiology, your minerals, your hydration, your stress markers, how you're sleeping, probably what your diet looks like, because believe it or not, it's all in one space. I was having a conversation with somebody that is a very, very faith-driven human being, and they asked me how I knew this worked, and my simple answer was because this. In the beginning, there was the Word. So once you start with that and you recognize from that all creation happened, you should also recognize that if you're created in the image of your Creator, that everything that comes out of you subconsciously and consciously is a different conversation, but just what you're broadcasting holds the entirety of you at all time. And if you can get a snapshot of that that's accurate, you can actually know what's happening with inside of your resonation with inside of your body. So that's my
So,
how I got here story. A little
yeah,
long, but how I got here.
it was totally fine and not too long, of course. So, a couple things, if you don't mind. One, I've done this, and so I have an appreciation for what the report looks like, and the can't comment on the efficacy of it because I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you that I can see that there's actionable items to do, right?
Hmm.
There have been many businesses that are dependent on the aggregation of data to hold new data against so they can come to an understanding of what the new data looks like, which is your database that you're taking the 30-second voice note against. How do you feel about that data? Meaning, one who would be questioning how good this is would wonder how good that data is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were to say how that works, there's two effective sets of data. Okay. There's the who I am data, like your CRM, your personal information, which to be honest with you is the last thing that we look at. There's no bearing in my world for that.
Yeah,
Right. So there's a safety question that people ask. Well, what happens to my, well, to be honest with you, I could explain to you how our system works. And I, as an actual product person, have built so many firewalls between this and that your data gets pushed away. But the pool of data by which you speak. So in 2025, which is where we are now, in the Annals of Family Medicine, they researched 25-second clips and they had about 15,000 of them. And they used AI, and I will make a difference between AI and computer learning in a minute, to look at speech patterns. And they recognized that like something like 70% of it had a marker for depression. Okay. So that's pretty broad. And then they say, well, that might not be correct because that's
probably not.
really very
A lot.
broad.
Yeah.
So to your point, how do I know that's the specificity of the data then? All right. So what they then did, and this is a published report on I'm reading this, so excuse me, AI-based voice biomarker tool to detect the single construct within moderate or severe depression. It's in the Annals of Family Medicine 2025 .23.63 colon so on and so forth. Happy to provide the info, right? But the reason I use that as the study is because to be honest with you, everybody has a bad day. So what's depression versus I'm having a bad day? So what they did then do is go look at other biomarkers, which is my point of bringing this up. The totality of who you are is based more than the snapshot of what's being looked at. So to a conversation we were having offline, we are one of our main focus groups is women 35 plus, mostly because of premenopausal, menopause, and then the generation behind me that has perimenopausal. And the question that we were discussing was, where in your cycle would it matter? And my answer is, well, all of it. Right after your cycle, in the middle of your cycle, at the end of your cycle, assuming you're a woman. Because that particular snapshot is that moment in time, and that's what you're getting. So for us, when we look at our databases, I'm looking at thousands and thousands of that have been in PubMed or NIH or the Annals of Family Medicine. And inside of all of those, there is the data set, what we're looking at, and then there is the problem solution set. So for us, I'm using best practice in the marketplace. We're not creating the standard.
Right.
I actually pride myself at this exact moment being first to market And I get to use all of the white paper and data. I was on the phone this morning because NIH just put out a new study, just put out a new grant for a new study with the University of South Florida to look into this type of research for a diagnostic. And I was having a conversation with them saying, well, I'm actually not trying to be a diagnostic. I don't want to tell you what you have. I want to tell you what's going on so we can cohabitate with each other, because I'll give you the raw data and you can extrapolate it into whatever you're diagnosing. I want to say to somebody, their magnesium's low, their hydration is off, they don't have boron, this is the type of vitamin B or D you should take, the things that they can affect and adjust to. So to answer your question succinctly, now after I've danced around it, our data is based upon what the acceptable best practice data that has been published, kicked, peer reviewed, and because most of that stuff becomes publicly aware, that's where my chief science officer, because I am not a doctor, don't even play one on TV, right? That's where our science is coming from. The has been checked, has been approved. These are standards. This is what we're working with. Now, mind you, because we all live in the age that we do, we recognize standards can change, and when they do, ours will change. What you look at today might not be what you're looking at tomorrow, and if tomorrow brings a new rubric by which you look at somebody's hydration, then that's what we'll do. But because I'm not telling you, and as you've seen our reports, all of our reports come with, please consult a doctor. We are educational. We are not trying to tell you. I'm trying to give you the snapshot, and I can do that in real time, because to be perfectly frank with you, I can get it to you faster and better than blood. I can get it faster and better than urine. I would tell anybody out there looking to do a test for themselves that if you're going to get labs done, do your hair or do your saliva. Saliva is most up to the moment right now, and hair actually has lineage, meaning like
Hair follicle
it's like the
test.
root of a tree.
Yeah, it's
Took a minute
forever.
to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, forever. Your blood is a standard because it's not a hard thing to get, even though it's invasive. None of us like needles, but the reality of it is by the time you get it back, your blood has cycled and changed, which is why you get diagnosis out of it, like large scale things. You have the precursor for X, you have Y. What we're trying to do is different than that. What we're trying to do is say to you, hey, if I were you, you might want to manage your stress. You might want to look into these types of supplements. You might want to have a better relationship with what you're putting into your body when you exercise. Did you stop eating 3 hours before you went to bed? How is your oral health? Because your oral health affects your gut. Those type things, so you can begin to make better judgment calls.
I would say one of the most important things to me about this, and I would suspect for others, is that it is a very easy, direct, and available right now way of getting data that you wouldn't otherwise get unless you went to some wellness clinic and they did all their diagnosis. So you can have it do your 30-second clip, and within an hour or whatever your time frame is, you have data that's actionable. And that is
It's
better than
actionable.
not having it. Because you're not going to go to the
Well,
doctor. You're going to go to the doctor for your regular checkups, but this you can have right now.
so to your point, it's about actionable. It really is. If I started my day off and I have the ability to make my own choices, and I started my day off and I'm feeling a certain way, and I did a ToneWell report, I can actually then choose when to eat, when not to eat, what to supplement. So as somebody that does packaged goods for a living, I have had multiple clients that are in like the NAD space and the MNN space. And I love them as clients. Their products are great because I won't work with junk. But I will actually also tell you that most of those things are how to jumpstart your own engine. Okay. So if you get your engine jump started, you might not need to keep supplementing. And therefore, you might be able to move on to the next set of supplements or the next set of inputs so that you can get the whole stack built. But since we all know that high premium supplements are cost prohibitive, unless you're talking about hormone therapy, things that you always need to take, right? Which is why you recommend young men don't start testosterone therapy, because welcome to it. Now that's the rest of your life. Learn how to eat properly, learn how to eliminate other things. But my point in that
Exercise,
is,
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
right. But my point in that is, so if you could get a snapshot of yourself, then you can begin to make those choices. I am not against Western medicine, go to doctor, human being at all whatsoever. But I will tell you that specialists specialize. So maybe if you could be a better generalist for yourself, you could then optimize the conversations that you have with the professionals, and therefore get the outcome that is more suited to what it is that you want to accomplish in your life, right? Like that's just a real thing. And most importantly, if you're a mother with young kids, don't you want to know if it's the sniffles or the flu? Well, I can tell you that. Or if you're I actually had somebody that came out of my beta test that's now like a full-blown client of ours, because he's one of those, like, I'm on 15 planes a week kind of guy. And as soon as I showed him not just the hydration stack and the vitamin stack, but I can tell you pathogens and disease and microplastics and things like that. And as soon as he saw it the first time and got off and saw that he had the precursor of one of the many types of pneumonias, he went, dude, I have like 10 more flights. And I went, well, you can get that right now, as opposed to when you get off the flight 35 days from now and you have now walking pneumonia. Now that's just me being hyperbolic,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm again
Make
not
the point.
diagnosing anything, but I can tell you right now your body's carrying XYZ. So your choice, you do something about it.
Yeah. Super fascinating. What's the magic about the 30 seconds?
The magic about the 30 seconds is that within inside of 30 seconds, you've probably hit every syllable and sound. So there is a heart study. I want to get where it came from. It was called Acoustic Voice Speech Biomarkers of the Treatment of Status During Hospitalization for Acute Decompression Heart Failures from 2023. And they've recognized that in 25 seconds, I just give myself a 5-second bumper, in 25 seconds of speech, not reading,
Right.
of speech, you've hit every syllable and sound, the way that your tongue moves, the way that your mouth moves, the way that you open and close. It's an inevitable that you've made it through the A-E-I-O-U, sometimes Y,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's what matters. The funny thing is that people say to me, well, who listens to this? And my answer is nobody listens to it. We check it to make sure that the decibel's high enough, that it's the right format, but nobody listens to it, because I'm not, nothing personal. I don't care what you're saying.
Right.
What I'm
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
looking for is the wavelength, the peak and the valley with inside of this. Just to get silly for a second, the biomarkers that we're looking at actually are the percentage of decibel within inside of the wavelength, meaning how hard does it hit up, how hard does it hit down, and where against the median line is it supposed to be.
And how do you distinguish, and this might be way too much in the weeds, but it's fascinating. How do you distinguish which one of those lines represents which part that you are trying to report on?
Okay, so there are two things that you just asked, and I'm going to bifurcate them, because one's computer learning and the other one's AI. And this is where I will make the distinction. So computer learning is, there is 20 years of a computer pulling in data, changing its subset, looking for markers, understanding what it's looking for, building an equation, not an algorithm, an equation by which it's taking in data and looking for certain things. And then out of that output, it creates, in my world, what's called a JSON script, which is just like, this is what we have found, this is what it looks like. I will organize them into mineral load, vitamin load, fascia, muscularity. Right? There's 7 main categories that the data gets dumped into. Then AI comes in. So AI is the rubric by which I make things into plain English. Okay, so it's taken me let's say 2 years of development of the product to market. So how do you go into the file and take this file and make it into a JSON output that can be reported on? And then there's the report, which is the second part of your question. So the report for me, when I first started doing this for people, it's like I overloaded information because it was too specific and too scripted towards science. And now when you look at our report's looking at recommendations morning, midday, evening, and night. It's looking at these are the 3 things you should do first. It is, if I were you, I would look at these types of food. Here are supplements, by the way, only over the counter. You can find them anywhere. I hope you go to the best in the world, but if you wanted just to walk into your local GNC, it's a good place to start. And that information, which is where I'm going there, I've actually taken out of best practice from what reports look like. If there is as we all recognize, like most people don't read, they look at stuff, and the look at stuff side of the world is science. And those science people that were like, this is what people look at first, big, broad block subtitle content, to be honest with you, is what we built our AI against. It just takes the information out of the computer learning side of it, which is very hardcore, and frames it in a way that everybody can just glance and get.
Yeah, get
And
it.
glance and get, funny enough, can allow people to make habits. So like, like if I were to say to you, you got to go to the gym, you're like, great, but I don't know what to do. But if I were to say to you, just dude, go outside and walk for 10 minutes. You already know how to walk. You've been doing it for a while. Right. And that difference is just based upon what the core audience, wants to see.
So if one were, and I'm looking at this from the same way, and it might be the wrong way, but it doesn't matter, that I would look like an investment opportunity. What is it that one should know that would cause people to say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. It's too valuable for whatever you're charging. It sounds a little hokey pokey, but what are the pushbacks that you've seen from people that arguably have pushbacks that are worth considering? And what are the answers to those?
So the funniest pushback that I get from people is mostly before they try it. So here's a very interesting thing, and I've noticed this a lot. It's so much easier to curse the darkness than it is to light the candle, right? Even if I told you where the candle was and I put the match in your hand. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
a lot of the pushback that we get from people is like, well, how do I know? You'll know when you know. Like, how can I help you with that? Now,
Yeah.
the interesting thing about that, and I have people ask me after they've done this, well, how did you know that my L3 was hurting? I have no idea, actually. I again, first off, there's no intake report. Like I didn't,
Right.
you're not sitting at a doctor and telling me about all the past diseases and that one time at band camp where you got stitches. I don't ask any of that. So the proof is always in the pudding. And I had a very skeptical investor. So if we'll talk about the investment side of this at some point, we actually have only brought in $100,000 because I'm one of those guys that is going to raise against debt, and my margin is okay enough that I'll do debt servicing and we'll grow. I'm not trying to be nothing against any of the people in the wellness space. I don't actually want to raise $100 million. That strikes me that that's what I'll be doing with my life, as opposed to I actually know that I can do this by word of mouth, and more efficacious and the better result I can give somebody, the easier that will become. So I say that to say this. I had an investor who was our first $25,000 investor, friends and family, obviously. And I'm a bit of a rambunctious guy. I'm definitely an outsider. I'm completely I'm somewhat of a contrarian, or I'm the guy that you hand something to see if it breaks. Like, legitimately, it's what I do. So they said to me, Alex, well, why this? And I said, oh, well, that's a great question. I've built a million things, and this is the first thing legitimately since 9/11 that I have tried to build and put into the world by myself. And the reason is because I actually know it works. And they said to me, well, we'll see about that. Okay, great. We'll see about that. They sent me a 30-second clip. When I sent back to them, they called me out of their mind. How did you know my shoulder had a tear? How did you know that I had meniscus? I said, I don't know any of this. I'm telling you, you broadcast that.
Yeah.
If you walk with a limp, there's a reason. If you have a frog in your throat, there's right. So that's pushback number one. How do we know? Well, let me show you. And the second pushback is actually why, if you look at my report, and I say it ad nauseum, this is educational, because first off, education is the most expensive thing that we do in the entirety of our lives. So I'm going to educate you on you, one. Two, this is non-diagnostic. I am not trying to look past the information that we hand you. It is actionable information. If you choose to use it, mazel tov. If you choose not to use it, still on you. It's okay. Now, the interesting thing is, I have a bunch of people that have used it and they said, well, I was never a supplement person, but I saw that it said I could just use this one thing first and then, and then, and then. And I said, yeah, you don't actually have to start a regimen on day one. Why don't you start the first thing that helps with your, I don't know, melatonin or whatever, the digestion, whatever it is. And if that one thing makes you, here's the argument nobody can ever argue with you about, feel better. It's the one thing you can't argue with somebody, how they feel. So if I can help you feel better, then maybe you'll do the next thing. And then maybe when you've done a couple things that make you feel great, you'll start doing more. So that's always the second pushback, is like, well, you're going to just tell me all these things that are wrong. And I said, that's not actually true. I'm not going to tell you anything that's wrong. You're a perfect human being as you are. We're just flawed, right? Yeah. What I'm going to tell you is how you can start making better decisions for you. And as somebody that has, and we obviously know each other for a long time, and I've done the family office circuit, bringing people around and doing the luncheons and all that stuff. And you always answer the why first, right? And then why do I exist? Why am I solving this problem? Why do I think that it's going to make a difference? And in that world, I will tell you that wellness and longevity are hot, flat, and crowded. You can go to your local gym that's wellness, or you can go to the $25,000 night retreat. They're also calling that wellness, and you're depending upon the trainer or the modality person or the whatever. What if you took your own power back? Mm-hmm. What if you had a better relationship with yourself, that you understood what you could do? Therefore, when you went to these places that are all wonderful and validating, and your intention and your attention should be completely matched so you get the outcome. But what if you went there with a better understanding of who
armed
you
with
were,
information,
so you didn't have to just accept what someone was saying?
Humans are really interesting characters, because for the most part, and this is, I shouldn't generalize, but I'm going to anyway. Often people are looking for the easy way out or the magic. And the seekers in the wellness space will likely never find what they're looking for, because they're by definition, they're seekers, right? So imagine if those people were armed with more information about themselves rather than waiting for somebody else to tell them what's wrong with them and how to fix it.
Well, here's an interesting thing to that. I have a very dear friend of mine on the West Coast that is a practitioner with inside of the psychedelia space. He is an absolute top-notch ayahuasca shaman, and he is an absolute top-notch ketamine. Excuse me.
Ketamine.
No, ketamine.
Yeah.
Ketamine person, and he only is there for your PTSD, and he's not, there's no good time. I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe you have a good time, but there's no good time in this. He is this is how we're going to help you get to the other side of where you are. So I used him also in my beta program, and I said to him one day, when he had a big group together, he was going to Costa Rica with a big group of people to do the whole schmear, and I said to him, hey man, why don't you do me a favor and give me a pre and post? He's like, yeah, I'd love to, no problem. So he did a voice thing pre, and when I sent it back to him, he actually then had information that he could make actionable in his own practice, because he could now put his intentions and his attention towards the things that he saw from the report that we sent him, where he had lack, if you would, in his physical fundamentals. And then afterwards, we did one, and there are a couple scores that we put out, one of which is called a Coherence score, which is like literally how in tuned are you with yourself. And it's easy to see. In the 80s and above, you're pretty good. In the 80s and below, you're like, oh, I got some stuff to work on. It's just a very easy thing to recognize. So his score, secondarily, his coherence was way off, like legitimately 10 points higher than it was the day before. And he said to me, man, this, you don't understand the tool that this helped me. Like, he's a practitioner in that space, but he had, you kind of guess a little bit, like, this is how I'm feeling is a little bit different than I should feel this way about that.
You have
And
a
when you look,
validating data point.
right. So he said to me, and now he has a new group coming together. We're going to do all that whole group, because if you've shown up in a place like that, then you already know what it is that you think you want to work on. But what if I could help you hone that in a little bit and say to you, hey, not for nothing, because you're fasting beforehand, but when this is over, you definitely should eat these things and not that. You should try bitter food for your digestion. You should be looking at more of a, of whatever, a holistic approach to. Otherwise, what's kind of the point? And that really is, and I said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say a million times. Our mission is to help people have better relationships with themselves, because I want you to go get the Whoop thing. But recognize that's just an aggregation of data. It's just, and not for nothing, nothing against any wearable, but understand that wearables that are here and here are the end of the subway train. Literally meaning they've run the whole track and they now have to return and go back. Now, I'm not knocking them because they have very high sensitivity trackers in them, but it's not coming from Grand Central, which is right here. Okay. So maybe think about these things, that if you're already in the wellness space, which is a forever seek, it really is, that your well-being, though, is in the fundamentals. What really, where is your iron or your magnesium? Did you know, like, first time I ever did it told me I was deficient in boron. I didn't actually know that boron was a thing I could take. Total seriousness. And my wife said, oh, yeah. Well, you take a sal palmetto and it doesn't have boron in it. The next sal palmetto I get, I'll make sure there's boron in it. And she did.
Wow.
And a month later, when I took the thing, because I have digestion issues, which is why I take sal palmetto, right? Like, my boron was where it was supposed to be. I hope I sound like a moron. I have no idea what boron does. None, zero. But what I know is that it's a mineral and a metal that my body needs. So if I can put it in there, my body will know what to do with it, and hopefully I'll feel better. And that really is like the whole point of ToneWell. I'm not trying to compete with, Quest Diagnostic Lab or the Whoop Ring. Those guys are fundamental at this moment in infrastructure, but they're not actually fundamental in the individual. And to the point we were making earlier when we were discussing off camera about, I'm really big right now, I'm putting my hormone panels together for women and the neurotransmitters, because, they make the things. And that's because every woman I know in my lifetime is going to go through menopause, but they all go through it differently, different timing, different hormones don't fire. And if you just ended up at a doctor, nothing against doctors, and they just give you the pill for your thyroid, but it's not the right, then you now have a cascade of other things going wrong. So maybe start fundamentally first. And then by the time that you've gotten to the doctor, you can say to them, I'm taking these things to support this thing. So maybe when you look at my thing, this is really more who I am.
So foundational, good foundation, same old thing, basic life type stuff. You don't have a good foundation.
Yeah, our 3 tagline is speak, discover, thrive. That's it. Like, it's very like, I've been in the woo-woo space. I love it, by the way. I'm a born and raised New York City kid. I love me some psychedelia. I was in cannabis before it was legal. All of those things, right? I was in the music business. I can talk for days about, the theoretical or the esoteric, as you would. But the fact of the matter is, like, just the base fact is that you are how you speak about yourself. That is mindset. So, don't discourage yourself before you go do something, because it will never happen.
Right.
That's the subconscious. If you can get your subconscious to be nicer to you, you'll feel better. And it's also physical. Like, the physical world of vibration and the physical world of wavelength is real.
It's
It's
real.
why they call it black noise. Black noise is the note that the opera singer hits to break the glass. That is a particular pitch of a note. Not every glass, by the way, has the same note because crystal is not all of the same, right? Or if you were to look at the Dr. Emoto studies from years ago, which are somewhat substantiated. Some people think they're bunk. It doesn't much matter. It's the notion of how you speak to the water crystal before it becomes ice. And if you look at the fractal, if I'm very nice to it, it looks great. If I'm very mean to it, it doesn't look great. Dr. Emoto, it's one of the coolest studies of all time. It's why people tell you to play classical music to your plants. Like there actually was I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head, a record in the 1970s where somebody made synth music specifically for plants because the resonation, like literally the frequency that they played on the keys were for specific plants, like the ficus versus the spider plant or whatever. And it all sounds crazy until you were like, but is it? Because
It's
when I heard a piece of music, my hair stood up and I couldn't tell you why because it
listen,
resonated with you.
it's not crazy, and most of us have experienced this. I happen to love classical music. I love rock and roll. I love it all. But when you walk into the Philharmonic and they
Different,
play,
different.
there's something divine about that, and you know it, right?
Yeah, so one of those, like, just to show you my kind of wackier side, there are wonderful conspiracy theories about modern music was made so that you are disconnected from yourself. And that's a photo of Elvis right there. I was in the music business. I was born and raised around it. I am a absolute savant for modern music. I can name things on the first note. You don't ever want to play that game with me. But I will tell you that classical music is actually the music that soothes the soul and heals your person and makes you into something better. And if you've ever walked into any of the cathedrals, the ones that are still left in the world, and you just hear somebody sing and your whole body does this, you know that you're missing something, right? That's it's a speaker right there, B&W speaker that I'll turn it up to 11 and my neighbors will hate me, but it doesn't mean that I'm getting anything out of it versus the resonant power of a full harmonic symphony that's hitting the whole range. Like something happens. So if you're just a resonator, like, it's like when you hear your voice for the first time, you're like, that's how I sound.
Yeah,
Well, that's actually because you're used to just hearing yourself because you don't hear this, the resonator,
right.
right? And that feeling right here is really the broadcaster, right? So it goes both ways. Like your input matches your output, and your output is what the world hears, right? But if you're outputting something that it's like the garden hose that has a kink in it, it's still spitting out water,
Yeah,
but not to the full, that it could. And then, not for nothing, I can tell you about microplastics because they affect your signal. I can tell you about, heavy metals, and we all know that they're there. Like, I don't need to get down that hole, but you've been drinking water out of plastic bottles since the 1980s. That, by the way, you think those trucks are refrigerated? No.
no,
So,
yeah.
like,
Cool. So one of the things you said earlier, I'm wondering if this makes sense to you. Oftentimes we see people, and I've experienced this, going into a plant-based medicine journey, either as a group or individually, and the instructions are often come in with an intention or not. But if you do, maybe that will, and often it happens that you get in there and it's saying, no, 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 you need to solve this problem. That
mm-hmm,
problem you came in with, don't worry about that one. And so the magic comes up to the surface and says, we're solving this one. Don't worry about that one for now. Right. So isn't this a liken to
it
being able
is.
to have the data?
It is. Well, so here's the thing. So our dear friend, Dr. Bear Walker, who is my partner for full disclosure, he specializes as a double PhD, MD, American Indian shaman, the whole,
He's the
like,
best.
raised on reservation, the real deal, all the way front and back. Specializes in what is like kind of integrated medicine because we're just seeing the effect of things. It's the Rube, like you are a Rube Goldberg machine. Maybe I'll just say it that way.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good way to
So
put
it's
it.
like The feather tickled the thing that moved the candle, that lit the rope, that hit the foot, that kicked the bowling ball, that rope. And all you're seeing is the splashdown 37 moves later, right? But if you started with the up front, what move? Oh, it was the fan that moved the feather that tickled the. Maybe I should go check out the fan.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems that we have, period, end of conversation. I said it earlier. It's like people look at things, they don't read it. And then we all get mad that we've given away all of our data to social media because you know what? They bet that you were not reading the thing. They put a box there purposely. They showed you that it was more than one
And you
paragraph.
couldn't
went,
go on until you checked it, right?
Right. You're like, check, done.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the outcome? The outcome is you can't actually be mad at any of these companies for, scraping your
Absolutely not.
information. So I just say that in the case of where we are, which is why, again, I'm going to say it ad nauseum. We do not diagnose. I'm giving you the real-time information of what's happening right now. And right now is different than later now and 3 days from now and a week and a half after 3 days from now, right? Like they're different, which is why, you check in with yourself. Back to like the spiritual side or the shamanistic side, like every intention and attention, set and setting, input equals output. They all start with, have you checked in with yourself recently? Have you actually ever looked in the mirror and waited for the voice to talk back to you? Is that a nice voice? Is it a mean voice? Is it encouraging? Is it depressive? And that's kind of the truth about who you are. Everything else is the worst expression ever, faking it until you make it.
Yeah.
Right? But what if
nonsense.
What about the person that lives their authentic selves? Because they are. So what if you actually, before you just started taking BP 517 because it's the hottest peptide today, you actually stopped and went, hold on, there's like 1,000 peptides. Do I need to take that one? I don't have any muscle injury right now. I'm being told by Dr. PDQ or influencer XYZ that it's the, it's the key to
Whoever's
longevity.
advertising recently, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But who's key to whose longevity? And by the way, and I with no disrespect to any of my peers in this space, but how are you telling me about longevity when you're 35?
Yeah, right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that you've overcome a thing or two, but how many times have you been knocked down? Let me see your scars. What ailment specific? Like these things, like it's Cinderella's slipper, all of us. It doesn't fit everybody. So you should maybe start with who you are. And that's the same like when I was talking earlier about like the consumer packaged good stuff. I actually used the word DNA because it's what I said to every client ever was like, look, man, I'm actually more concerned with what your DNA is. And once I know that, I'll know if you should have soccer cleats on or a restaurant. Are we going to the Gap or am I going to Louis Vuitton? What's your DNA? What's your voice? Who are you in the space? And that's the same about everybody should have a wellness protocol. Everybody should have a better understanding of what they eat, what they drink, what they put in their body. I worked for Sony Music Corporation for years and years. And when I quit Sony, I was drinking literally a 6-pack of Coca-Cola a day because it was free in the commissary, by the way. So I would drink it as opposed to water. You know what happened when I left Sony? I no longer was going to pay for the soda because why would I do that? It was free. And I lost 15 pounds by doing nothing else over 3 weeks. And I literally said to myself, what else can you do? Yeah. And that started my own personal journey. This is 2007, right? And somewhere in my early 40s, actually at 40, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu about being the seeker. I'm a black belt, but I'll never be as good as the guy that started 20 years before me, nor as good as I want to be. And that's awesome because now I have a practice and that practice gets me somewhere. I've also practiced not drinking soda. Same practice. Yeah. How do I better myself? And that's kind of for where ToneWell, as I said earlier, as somebody ever said to you, better not take that tone with me. Well, that's why it's called ToneWell, because what are you saying? And I want you to have the sense of well-being. And when you put those together, like that's where it is. So the pushback has always been, well, how do you know? Let me show you. I actually don't know anything. I'm like a professional generalist, very good at it. super quick so I can make you make you believe that I do know it, but I don't. What I've seen, though, are enough products and enough people and enough to market strategy that when I came across this technology, and I will say this again, it's the first time since 9/11 that I have stuck my hand up and said, I'm going to put my name on that. And for me, that means everything because I'm a like I believe in the only good line of the Scarface the movie was I only have two things, my name word and my balls, and I don't break them for anyone. Right.
Right.
So like if I've put my name on it, that's my word. And since I make a comfortable enough living in the wellness space, why would I want to compete with my clients? Because I actually see an opportunity in the marketplace to give people their own particular power, and then they can decide, is it NAD or NNM? Am I doing peptides or am I doing juice fasting? Do it all, but do it with a sense of like what your body is actually calling for. Maybe your body is like, dude, you know there's like 4 or 5 types of magnesium and you're taking the wrong one. Just on a base level. Oh, you know that multivitamins are terrible and you don't actually need one, but what you do need is magnesium, manganese, boron, and potassium, whatever. I'm just pulling things out of my head, right? And that's the value.
Yeah. So I know about your balls and your word. So
Yeah, don't break them. They're also bigger than the sun, so it's kind of like which one are you gonna do? You know,
exactly.
if you're not willing to step out, then what's the point?
What's the is there an opportunity like when I first got this and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I should do one of these every week, maybe
Yep,
every other day. You
yep.
know, are you packaging it up that way so people can buy a
So
monthly subscription?
yeah, so that's like let's be honest, I have to get into the marketplace. I need an MVP. It's why there's only a package of 1 scan and 3 scans. Period. My next phase there'll be an app, right? So the app makes it far more direct so you don't have to send me a file. It will just be a clean, here's the hyperlink for Arthur. Arthur goes, he uploads directly into the device. I was just trying to get to the marketplace, and I, to be perfectly frank with you, didn't want to deal with the coding because that's all it was. Okay. And in that, I then go to, I will absolutely get to bigger packages. I'll absolutely get to monthly subscriptions. I have a cohort of practitioners that I'm going to bring on board, not just as affiliates, obviously, but as hey, would you like to speak to somebody else? And these are the people we recommend. I'm
Yeah.
actually, to be frank with you, trying to get to the enterprise side of this. Like, I believe that I could really do a giant mitzvah in the corporate wellness space, like
No.
legitimately. Like,
Yeah.
there's kind of, there's 2 sides of this. Like, I've already spoken to very early on, like insurance underwriters, because they're like, oh my God, I'm hot for this. And then my brain went, well, that's a little too much Imperial Starship. I'll hold off for you guys for a minute. But the converse of that is the corporate wellness guy,
Well,
right?
the gold standard in, applying for life insurance is you go get a nurse to do an EKG,
Yep.
blood, urine, and imagine if you could just talk into the phone and you could get preferred premiums because the underwriter doesn't need to spend all that money to send out a doctor to your house, right?
That is 100% true. So there was a study in 2024 about children's biomarkers and how voice was equally as compelling as other collection of biomarker, with the caveat that put it over the top was that problem with needles is that they scare people, so your cortisol spikes. The problem with urine is, to be honest with you, not everybody has the greatest diet, and if your diet isn't what you want it to be, that's what it's going to show. It's not really showing all of the health side of it, right? So in that world, the answer is yes. Like, again, for me, it's very interesting. So like we dumb down the output for the every person. However, when I work with practitioners, because practitioners who are doing telemedicine, which is perfect example here. You're a practitioner doing telemedicine, and Arthur's coming in at 4 o'clock. So at 3 o'clock, Arthur is going to get an email push that says, here, give me this, right? Arthur does the 30 seconds. Arthur gets the recommendations Script, great, terrific, have a great day. But when Arthur shows up for his 4 o'clock appointment, the practitioner not only can walk through the report with him, obviously, but has the bio data on the back end and can actually know what's going on right now. And it's all done. It's not, there are things that you should, resting heart rate, EKGs, blood pressures, things like that. You absolutely need to have your once a year or your biannual. Sure.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about checking in, if you're talking about concierge doctors, hey man, I just got off the plane and I kind of feel XYZ. Well, give me a 30-second thing. I'll look at it right now. And it literally, back to the people pushback. Like, I have no idea that you hurt your lower lumbar, but it shows up.
Yeah.
I have no idea that you had meniscus surgery, but it shows up. So if that shows up, so do the pathogens and the viruses and the right. And if you're a practitioner, or if you're on the enterprise side, like you have 20,000 employees, 50,000 employees, or if you're in the insurance side, or if you're in all of those things, it's like, the Newtonian age is over. Like, the 20th century is dead. We're now in quantum. Think of all of the things that are just happening in quantum. Why is your Google phone making recommendations from this conversation? Well, because was it listening, or did it just know? Which one is it? Well, they're both the same now, aren't they?
Exactly.
Because you're in the quantum field now. So as that begins to roll itself out further and further, then understand that wellness is in your hand, which is why this is a lost leader, the wearables.
Yeah.
Nothing against them.
Yeah.
They're just showing you that your data can be collected. It's like I'm sitting here having a conversation with you on a wireless computer that's connected to nothing, using Wi-Fi. You and I are both old enough to remember copper in the walls and having
Really?
long
Twisted
phones.
pair.
And it's just moving you down the path of. So as I said earlier, we're first to market. I love our position. I'm not trying to compete with the Whoops and those guys, because I'm not trying to be Function Health. Nothing against Andrew Wild. Andrew, come to me in a second. But like, I don't need to raise the $100 million to tell you that go get blood tests. It's not necessary. You have a phone. I have computer learning. I know how to build a website. Why don't you come to it? Try us out. When I send you back something that not just blows your mind, but tells you things that you didn't tell me, right? Because frankly, I probably never meet you. And you can then start making these small actions, like, the road to riches starts with a dime, or the longest journey starts with a single footstep.
All right. So let's do this, because I've got to run. But
You may.
a couple things. One, to everybody, I have the advantage that as a result of my ToneWell report, I know Bear, and I'm going to have Bear help me take the action steps on the. That doesn't mean that everybody else can't. They can do it their own way. And so I just want people to know that if they need help as a result of the report, that can happen.
I will say this. Let me just jump in there.
Yeah.
So if anybody interacts with us, there is a email at the bottom of the website called support@tonewell.co. That comes to me directly. The scan@tonewell.co does not. That goes into the system. But the support comes to me directly. I am one of those people that has no unread emails, no unread texts. I answer everything, as Arthur can attest to.
Validate that.
Yeah. So if anybody does participate with us and would like to connect with a practitioner that can help them out, or, hey, I don't know where to get XYZ, it's not just a pleasure of mine, but honestly, like, part of the mission here is to make those types of connections.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And let's quickly talk about what you need in terms of funding, if at all.
So we are in a funding need in, let's say, the head of the year. As I said earlier, we raised $100,000, friend and family. I did it as debenture or safe notes, or call them what you want. Everybody has a different terminology for a loan. I'm paying them back on debt service. We have a nice margin, as one might imagine, in what we do. I pay a licensing fee for every use, because I have an exclusive license to the technology. I didn't develop it. Maybe I should say that up front. I have an exclusivity to it globally. Congratulations for me. So we've built this as a friends and family to begin with because I am an MVP person. I've built enough product in my life to know, let me get into the market. I am right now trying to scale to my first 10,000 scans. I figure that by the time I've gotten to 10,000 scans, not only will I have this report dialed in, but I'll have multiple other ones. You're a woman, you're a man, you're 25 and older, you're 35 and older, like, right? You're a peak performance athlete versus an
More
executive, those
precise,
types of
yeah.
things. We are going to go into a raise that is for pure audience capture. I have brought in a pretty well-known lobbyist to help me get to NIH and MAHA and because that's where we should be. And we intend to, at the head of the year, raise between 1.5 and 2.5 million in what will be our, we'll call it audience market capture, things like advertising and marketing. I intend to avoid as much as possible, though it might be difficult, the paid influencers versus the remunerated influencer, simply meaning I have a good margin and people that are intelligent understand a longer game versus a short game. But as somebody that was an agent for many years, cash in hand mostly, beats opportunity. And we'll find the healthy ground on that. I only say that to say I'm not looking to give equity away to influencers. Our notion is that at about 10,000 scans, our evaluation will be what we believe it to be, as opposed to today, to be honest with you, at $100,000 of borrowed capital and just getting into the place. It's just not worth raising money. Whilst our margin is good enough for us to do debt servicing and grow and pivot. We have a massive team of 4 people. So, I don't have a million babies looking at me like, hey, how do I get my formula? So that's kind of where we are in our capital stack. My goal is to not raise capital after about the 2.5 million, simply because at that point, if it's not self-generating,
Yeah.
then there's something that needs
Something
to be
wrong.
addressed.
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, it should be super scalable. The way we built this, I built it as an AI agent machine, meaning like it's thoroughly automated stem to stern. There's myself, my 2 partners. One of them is my wife, who's a nurse. One of them is Dr. Bear Walker, who's a doctor. And then I have an employee that sits in front of a terminal every day just to make sure that it's ticking and everything's going. And I might scale that to like 1 more employee so I can do it 24 hours a day. Other than that, it's an automated, AI agent world.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of you anyway, but you know that, but I'm a
Oh,
big fan.
thanks.
And if I didn't like it, I would tell you, but you already know.
Yeah, that's actually one of the many things I like about our relationship.
Yeah. All right, Alex, thanks for doing this.
I appreciate the time, Arthur, and thank you guys. If anybody has any questions, just reach out to me. I'm very proud of the product we built, and we'll stand behind it all day.
Awesome. And you can find Alex on the ToneWell site and LinkedIn. And if you need to otherwise get to him, just let me know.
I also happen to be one of those people. If you ever Google my name, I'm the first person that is my name. So, thanks everybody. Have a great day.